जल्दी बैठ जाइए सब लोग. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Am I audible to all of you? Okay. एक बार online students भी please confirm if I am audible to all of you. Now today we are starting another batch for current affairs batch which we start after mains examination. So I'll just take 5 minutes to give a orientation, give a introduction of what we are going to do in this batch over the next 11-12 months, and then I'll start with today's class. I'll just give me 5 minutes. उसमें देखो this new batch which is starting today has program divided into 3 phases. In the first phase, we are focused on mains examination, that is from September to December. We'll focus on mains examination. What we'll try to do, we'll try जैसे in the coming 1 month, we will try to finish all the current affairs of international relations and economy. अब देखो ये दो areas ऐसे हैं जहाँ पे ना the topics are very dynamic. International relation is all current affairs, so we'll actually finish entire international relations along with all its current affairs over the next 1 month. Similarly, economy की जो पहले 3 bullet points हैं, economic growth, development, employment, inclusive growth and government budgeting, वो सब भी the questions on them are also mostly from current affairs. So over the next 1 month we'll finish that. Then अगले 1 month में जाएंगे तो we will finish science environment from GS3 and governance and social justice from GS2. In this way, what we'll try to do is हम syllabus wise जाएंगे so that we are not studying unnecessary things. We'll try to ensure that after we complete a topic, we are also able to do most of the PYQs, most of the relevant PYQs associated with that. तो over जल्दी please जल्दी settle हो जाइए सब लोग. Over the next 4 months, we will keep doing mains preparation, but बीच में prelims facts भी करेंगे. ऐसा नहीं होगा, we won't do this कि all prelims thing is left for January. We'll keep doing some prelims preparation also, and you will keep getting both the test. On Sundays you will have both subjective test as well as objective tests. ठीक है, but our primary focus will be what? Our primary focus in first phase will be on the mains examination. In second phase, that second phase will be starting in January. From January to April, what will we do? We will primarily focus on pre. जितना भी current affairs है pre के लिए we'll cover it, plus for 4 subjects, for science, environment, international bodies and international mapping, we will do what? We will cover even the static part. Science environment के लिए if you are a student of current affairs program at LevelUp IS, I won't recommend you to touch any other source. We'll make sure that even static portion is being covered. So science, environment, international bodies and international mapping के लिए we will cover all 4 subjects. We will cover both static and current affairs, and rest for history, geography, polity, economy, we will do the current affairs section for preliminary examination in the second phase of examination here. यहाँ पे you will have only objective tests. जैसे in the mains phase you have both subjective and objective tests. यहाँ पे you will have only objective tests, including some CSAT tests. There will be 5-6 CSAT tests also held as part of this program. This will be the second phase. After this, we'll be done with pre after preliminary examination. That is in the third phase, June, July, and maybe 1 or 2 weeks of August. What will we focus upon? We'll again focus completely on the mains examination. The like based on what you complete today, how sincere you are here. अगर आप September, October, November, December में बहुत sincere हो, here the number of classes for you will only be two classes a week. You'll only need to do the current updates if you are sincerely studying in this phase. But if you are not very sincere in this phase, आप इसको lightly लेते हो, तो यहाँ पे आपका coverage would be higher. You will be taking more. I generally take 4 classes because new students also come, but for older students only 2 classes would be required. The students who have already been studying with me from June, or the students who have already been studying me from September, who will be studying with me from September, they will only need to do 2 classes a week here, only current updates, because most of the things we would have already done. But अगर आप अभी अच्छे से पढ़ाई, if you don't study properly right now, there you will have 4 classes and we'll cover every bullet point of the syllabus of GS2 and GS3. एक bullet point हम cover करेंगे, तो यहाँ पे 4 classes a week होगा. But because we are already doing a lot of those things there, so for students who are sincere here, there will be only 2 classes a week here, so that you don't have a lot of pressure. तो इसीलिए वी वांट टू गो वेरी सिस्टमैटिकली, वी वांट टू गो एकदम सिलेबस वाइज यहाँ पे, सो दैट यू योरसेल्फ आर कॉन्फिडेंट, ओके ये सब्जेक्ट्स तो मुझे आते हैं ना, मुझे क्लासेस करने की जरूरत भी नहीं है, आई विल ओनली डू द अपडेट क्लासेस. आर वी गेटिंग इट? In this phase, in every class, we'll also write 3 to 4 answers. A subjective test series is not part of this program. तो आपका जो मेंस का टेस्ट सीरीज होगा लास्ट फेज में, that is not part of the program. But in every class, you will write 3 to 4 answers. There will be a lot of emphasis on answer writing. Okay, ये तीन phases हैं प्रोग्राम के, करंट अफेयर्स प्रोग्राम के, that is starting today. We will be starting with, जैसे मैंने as I said, told you in the beginning, in the next 1 month, our focus will be on the, if you look at your GS syllabus, GS2 में international relations की there are 4 bullet points mentioned, है ना, India and its neighborhood, diaspora, international bodies and कुछ ऐसे करके 4 syllabus mentioned है. India major powers mentioned नहीं है, but some questions related to that also come. तो ये 5 points of the syllabus is what I'm emphasizing on over the next 1 month और 1.5 month, थोड़ा ज्यादा टाइम लगेगा अगर तो. और there are first 3 bullet points of इकोनॉमी सिलेबस. पहला बुलेट पॉइंट इज प्रीटी बिग, इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ भी उसी में मेंशन्ड है, एम्प्लॉयमेंट भी उसी में मेंशन्ड है ना, दैट. सेकंड इंक्लूसिव डेवलपमेंट एंड थर्ड वन गवर्नमेंट बजटिंग. इन चीजों से रिलेटेड जितना भी करंट अफेयर्स है और जितना भी रिक्वायरमेंट है फॉर आवर प्रिपरेशन ओवर द नेक्स्ट 1.5 months, वी विल डू इट, सो दैट ओवर द नेक्स्ट 1.5 months यू विल गो होम एंड से अच्छा मुझे सिलेबस के पोर्शन तो पूरे आते हैं, आई एम डन विद ऑल द करंट अफेयर्स. कल तक जो करंट अफेयर्स हुआ है कर दिया है, जीएसटी रिफॉर्म्स हुए हैं, वो जीएसटी रिफॉर्म्स हुए वो कर दिए, इंडिया चाइना रिलेशन में जो अपडेट चल रहा है वो कर दिया, इंडिया जापान में जो चल रहा है, ब्रिक्स में, बिम्स्टेक में जो हुआ है, एवरीथिंग इज अपडेटेड, आई एम रेडी. फिर once this 40-45 days are gone, we will go to science environment from GS3 and we will go to governance social justice on GS2. In this way we'll keep completing the current affairs along with in a systematic syllabus wise manner rather than haphazardly, rather than randomly. जब हम randomly current affairs कर रहे होते हैं ना, आपको पता नहीं होता आपने यार इंडिया चाइना पढ़ा कहाँ है, किस मंथ में पढ़ा है. Whereas we'll do all the IR at one go, ensuring that you will बी लाइक हाँ मेरा आईआर पूरा हो गया, ये मेरी बुकलेट्स है, इसमें सारे करंट अपडेट्स है. अब जो भी अपडेट होगा विल डू, इफ इट्स इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर प्री विल डू इट एट द टाइम ऑफ प्रिलिमिनरी एग्जामिनेशन, इफ इट्स इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर मेंस, इफ इट्स अ वेरी बिग थिंग देन विल कवर इट बिफोर दिसंबर ओनली, बट इफ दोज आर स्मॉल अपडेट्स विल डू इट आफ्टर प्रिलिमिनरी एग्जामिनेशन. मेंस में जो थोड़े बहुत अपडेट्स करने हैं, इन दिस वे वी आर गोइंग टू गो देयर. डू वी हैव क्लैरिटी ऑन दिस? Okay, any doubts before I start today's class? You have some doubt? No. Okay. Okay. Let's start with today's class. Today we are dealing with India-China relations. Now, India-China relations में ना 4 questions have been asked so far. They are not directly about India-China relations. One question is about how China is threatening US. What is the role of SCO? है ना, these kind of questions have also been asked, but there have been some questions की how is China impacting India, how is India impacting China. So all those questions are very current affairs centric. उस साल जो न्यूज में चल रहा था ना, questions related to that have been asked, and that is why while we'll cover India China thoroughly, we'll prioritize what? We'll prioritize those areas which are in discussion a lot. Okay, so let us start with थोड़ा सा ना background. Like as I told you, you will only need to study. अगर मैं IR करा रहा हूं आपको, तो आपके IR का सोर्स यही रहेगा. Even the background, even the basic part, we will cover here only, not only the current affairs aspect. वो वरना I end up covering only the factual portions. Even the analytical understanding based part will do. In fact, let me take you through the index once. What are the things that we are going to do? Pehle we'll understand a bit of history in not more than 5 minutes of India-China relation. Then we'll understand what happened in the post-colonial period, how relation has evolved, how after 2000 relations improved, what happened between 2014 to 2019. वो वुहान और महाबलीपुरम के इनफॉर्मल समिट तक जाएंगे. फिर द गालवान क्राइसिस एंड डिटोरिएशन इन रिलेशनशिप, हाउ इन 2024-25 normalization and thaw is happening again, reasons for it, why this normalization, why suddenly China who was a threat for us 1 year back or 1.5 years back, was we are getting close to them. Why? Reasons for that. Then key enduring challenges in India China relation. अब ना आप एग्जाम इस साल लिखो, अगले साल लिखो, उसके अगले साल लिखो, this thing like this portion may change. Thaw and normalization may not be there in 2026. We may talk about some other dimensions, right? But this is something that will always be there. Key challenges in India China relations, unless कल हमने border dispute resolve ही कर दिया, नहीं हो रहा है अभी, unless tomorrow we end up solving the Tibet issue and we end up solving the trade dispute and everything, those things are not going to change, or those things are not going to be resolved in next 1 or 2 or 3 years. So this is the most important part here. What are the key challenges in India China relations? We will study this along with the latest facts, figures, data. Then what should be the way forward and conclusion in India China relation? What should be the way forward for India? What are the dimensions on which should be working? And then we'll also help you understand what are the different ways conclusion could be written. I have got some quotes here from the various newspaper articles that I have been reading over the last 1 month on this particular issue. फिर एक issue को we are going to study in more detail. जैसे when we'll discuss current enduring challenges in India China relations, we'll also talk about border dispute in just a small paragraph. But here we'll study India China border dispute right from the beginning. What is the origin of the dispute? What are the various steps taken, like 1980s से अब तक, what are the steps that have been taken to deal with India China border dispute? Why we have not been able to resolve it, the key factors, key challenges which remain, and then way forward in conclusion. Way forward is similar to what is the way forward here. So I'll explain you how by understanding this way forward in conclusion you can talk about a way forward of almost every India China relation topic. Okay, now Night King is a student who's saying PSIR guys must be having a picnic in today's class. They can have a picnic in today's class, but please understand even PSIR guys would need to remain updated with the current affairs, and that is what we'll be doing here. We'll be ensuring that everything that has happened, like abhi na, yesterday there was a newspaper article by Shashi Tharoor, the rise of Chindia, CHINDIA. मैंने वो भी पढ़ के वो भी inculcate किया है. Even those dimensions are inculcated. So these things. Then tomorrow I'll continue with IR only. I will cover India China river water issue, India China Pakistan wala dynamics. Though I'm discussing it here, where I will discuss key challenges in India China relation. So एक line में I have mentioned, because when general question on India China relation come, we'll just be able to mention that thing in one line कि China Pakistan का close friendship is something that's hampering India Pakistan relation, but China Pakistan India के ऊपर से अलग से question भी आ सकता है. That is why we'll do that. Plus we'll go to BRICS and SCO, because BRICS and SCO are two other places where India China collaborate before we jump to India Russia and India Japan. ये मैं cover करना चाहता हूँ. India major powers में I generally cover India US, India Russia, India China, India Japan. ये चार cover करने होते हैं. India China we are doing today, India Russia, India Japan will come, will do it maybe tomorrow or in worst case day after tomorrow. Okay, ये वाला portion हो जाएगा, India major power हो जाएगा. Then what will be the next IR topic that will go to? India and its neighborhood. तो neighborhood में China तो we will cover in India major power only, but India Pakistan, India Nepal, India Bhutan, India Bangladesh, वो सारी चीजें हम cover करेंगे. Then we'll go to India and regions, India Southeast Asia, that is India ASEAN, India Central Asia, India Africa, India South America, India EU. India Germany नहीं करना है. वो न्यूज में ना magazines, current affairs magazines unnecessarily bring those kind of topics. Those are not needed. Those will just be an addition, a small addition in our India Europe relations. कभी individual countries पे in India Germany या India Singapore या India UAE, those questions don't come. In our broader India Southeast Asia relation, how does Singapore contribute? That is something that we may be needing. Do we ये समझ में आ रहा है? Do we all have clarity on this? Then we'll go to international bodies and diaspora and associated issues. Okay, साथ में parallelly, because so that we do not end up getting bored of only IR कि current affairs में बस IR चल रहा है, we will also start parallelly the economic growth, development, employment, inclusive development, and the issues associated with government budgeting and all. Syllabus wise, we will do all the current. So when we'll study government budgeting, there will also talk about tax reforms, the GST changes, GST reforms, direct tax reforms which occurred in the budget this year. All the current updates we will be dealing with. So do we need to attend separate classes for GS2 and GST after the CA classes? No, you won't need to. That is the thing. I tell you, if you are a student of Current Affairs program at LevelUp IAS, it is my responsibility to ensure that GS3 or GS2 ka each and every bullet point is covered in classes only. Okay, you will not need to attend separate class for mains examination, but I expect you to know the fundamentals of polity and economy. Basics of polity, basics of economy. Here I will not be able to talk about what is fundamental right, what is mentioned in Article 18 of the Constitution, what is mentioned in Article 21 of the Constitution. I will be using that knowledge to write our mains answers to help you get ready for mains examination. In fact, in general, if you are a student of Current Affairs program, what I expect from you is आपको 5 subjects के आने चाहिए अपने आप से, history, geography, basics of polity, basics of economy and ethics. Other than that, in your GS preparation, we will take care of everything. Again, I'll repeat it. What should you be knowing if you are a part of Current Affairs program? You should know the basics of history, basics of geography. History, geography, history, geography to pura hi, not only basics, basics of polity, basics of economy and ethics. ये 5 चीजें is something that I won't be able to cover here because they take a lot of time. It won't remain a Current Affairs program if I start covering the entire Lakshmikant. What will I do? I'll cover mains ke bullet points in a very current affairs centric manner, in a very dynamic manner. Okay, let's start with India China relations. India China relations are also important because this year we are commemorating 75 years of our ties. 1950 में diplomatic tie, after 1949 में वहाँ पे communist party came to power, 1950 से हमारे diplomatic ties start हुए थे, so we are commemorating 75 years. But other than that, we see normalization occurring again, and therefore there are lots of articles by all the experts. क्या है normalization long term है? How do we make it long term? How can we improve India-China relations further? Why there was an article by M.K. Narayanan. He says that be cautious, don't trust China. We'll understand those. So everything that has been in news over the last 6 months, वो सारे points we have inculcated here other than the basic background point. So, but let's start with the beginning. We say that India-China diplomatic relations or relationships is something, was a diplomatic dog that didn't bark. इसमें हम क्या, what are we trying to say? For centuries we have been neighbors. Now we have been neighbors for centuries, but as such there was no relationship on the military front, on the economic front. Now there was very less interaction between the two neighbors. It was mostly because of the mighty Himalayas which prevented our interaction, and thus there was as such no big trouble between the two nations. Okay, this changed in the post-colonial world when the communist power came to power. When the communist party came to power in China, when United Kingdom or when the Britain got away from India, when two leaders, India में एक independent prime minister, China में एक independent president came into front, they thought that in order to take these two independent nations ahead, we have to work together. And India had given a lot of importance to China in the beginning. You will see India was the first country after first non-communist country after Burma. तो communist country तो China को People's Republic of China को recognize कर रहे थे, but non-communist countries were not doing it. Only Myanmar, Burma, which is today's Myanmar, did it, and India was the second country to do it. India became only the second non-communist country to recognize People's Republic of China. Otherwise, everyone was recognizing whom? जो भी Taiwan है, Republic of China, right? So we were the first country to do that. We also led the movement for ending the isolation of New China in international politics by getting them included in the United Nations. The idea was this, like one of the visions of PM Nehru was to enlist support of China for building a peaceful and stable world based on international rule of law. अपने नेहरू जी बड़े आइडियलिस्ट थे, चाइनीज वाले बड़े प्रैक्टिकल रहे. Okay, initially this was the scenario. If you go to India of 1950s, 1951, 52, 53, you will see we are focusing on good relations. China, India should have good relations and everything. But then things deteriorated in late 1950s. What happened there? First thing was China invaded or occupied Tibet in 1950. Now, when this happened, we were initially unhappy. Yes, Tibet was supposed to be a buffer state between us, but China occupied it altogether. We were initially unhappy, but we we were like, "Chalo, koi baat nahi." In order to ensure good relations with China, we accepted that, and you will see we gave up almost India gave up almost all its privileges in the region inherited from colonial past through the 1954 agreement on border trade. We had several privileges in Tibet during the colonial rule. We gave almost all of it just to ensure that India-China relations theek rahenge. But Tibetan uprising in 1959 was suppressed. Like people in Tibet rose against China, was suppressed very brutally by China. At that time, Dalai Lama and many of his followers got refuge in India. That became a problem. Meanwhile, border problems had also emerged. Aksai Chin region. Aksai Chin region. अच्छा, we will when we'll come to India-China border issue, हम उसे थोड़ा और detail में पढ़ेंगे कि how it started and all. But Aksai Chin region was kind of occupied by China. Now, Aksai Chin region का situation ये था कि it was a desert region. Politically, it was part of India. It was considered part of British India also, but it didn't have any military control. No one actually controlled it. So China found the option and it illegally occupied it. That became a issue of tension. Dalai Lama Tibet issue, Dalai Lama issue became a issue of tension between these two countries. When India tried to reoccupy Aksai Chin, there were more counter acts done by China. Eventually, all these things led to what? All these things led to the 1962 Sino-Indian War. Background again, we'll repeat it. Early 1950s, things are going well. Tibet is being occupied by China. India was like, chalo koi baat nahi. Let's promote good relations with neighborhood, with our neighbor. We gave up almost all our privileges that we had in Tibet. But then occupation of then China also occupies Aksai Chin. Tibet mein uprising happens. The it is getting brutally suppressed. The Dalai Lama comes to India, gets refuge in India. That is also not seen very positively by China. All these things eventually led to India-China war. And after this things dynamics changed drastically. For almost 30 years, there was very few interaction. We'll see. Ambassador relationship would be established only in 1976, 15 saal baad. It will be broken somewhere in 1961-62, and will not even have ambassadors till 1976. When Rajiv Gandhi in way back in late 1980s will go to China, this will be the first visit of a prime minister from India after Nehru visited the place. So things changed drastically after the China-India war. Then there were some other factors which led to deterioration of relation. What was that? One, we were very close to USSR, but there was a divergence between USSR and China. अब कौन कम्युनिस्ट वर्ल्ड को लीड करेगा, उस पे दोनों के बीच में both these countries are having differences, and because of these differences and because of India's closeness with Russia, India and China tensions remained high. Then China also started supporting Pakistan, especially after the 1965 war. फिर से क्या होगा? India-China tensions will remain high. Broadly, this is the picture. In IR, we don't need to go into every story in detail. Broadly, how India-China relations deteriorated. Then 1962 war especially had huge impact on our relations. Before 1962, no, we were not that much focused on border infrastructure, on militarization of border areas, but that started happening after that. Again, when this would happen, we understood that China has improved its infrastructure a lot. We also started doing it. It will create a situation of tussle between them. It will create a situation of distrust between the two countries, because both of us would be worried. They are improving their infrastructure in the border areas for what purpose? For the purpose of countering us. They may invade us tomorrow. Same was the situation from the China's side. So this led to deterioration in the situation. So 1960s were bad for India-China relation. 1965 के बाद China, Pakistan also started getting close, further worsening the situation. उसी late 1960s में India, Russia getting closer. India, Russia तो were always close, but Russia and China diverging away became an issue. Things started changing after mid 1970s. Indira Gandhi government restored diplomatic relation to ambassadorial level some 15 years after it was downgraded in 1961. So we had embassies, China opened embassy in India, we opened embassy in China, and at least this diplomatic relation was established. Then in 1981, Chinese foreign minister visited India and he agreed to resume talks on the border issue. Both of us agreed to resume talks on the border issue for after around 20 years. The next major initiative was by PM Rajiv Gandhi in 1988 when he visited China. This was after 34 years that an Indian Prime Minister visited China. इससे पहले Nehru visited China in way back in 1954. Here some measures were taken to further improve discussion on border issue, and things were moving in the positive direction. यहाँ पे the two sides agreed to set up a joint working group at the vice ministerial level, not at the ministerial level. Ministerial level would have been a higher level. At vice ministerial level, to meet annually in order to accelerate, in order to fast track the search for a settlement on the border issue. So are we seeing how things are evolving? 1976 में ambassadorial relation starts. 1981 में what starts? Discussion on border issue starts. 1988 में there is a joint working group at the vice ministerial level set up for dealing with the border issue or to accelerate that. In addition to that, over the period we have been meeting bilaterally at G20 level, BRICS, SCO and so on. ये बाद में होते रहे, अभी तक चल रहा है. Then in 1992 more consulates were opened. जैसे China opened consulate general in Mumbai and India opened one in Chicago. In late 1990s, relation nosedived a bit. Why? What happened here? In late 1990s, we tested nuclear weapon, and one reason that we gave we need nuclear weapon was our neighbor is China, and we have threats from China. It's a nuclear weapon country, so relations nosedived a bit. Okay, this was the scenario in the first 50 years. Till late 1990s हम जाते हैं, तो this is what happened. 1950 से late 1990s तक this was the scenario. Broadly हमें जानना है, like if you want to read every detail, that will not be needed for the examination, but you can read any history book, you can go to wiki page and पढ़ सकते हो क्या क्या हुआ. एग्जाम के लिए जरूरी नहीं होगा. एग्जाम के लिए broadly what are the things which happened we should know. But there was positive turn in India-China relation from in the 21st century. What had happened was in late 1990s, China also realized that India is doing well economically. अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी का एरा था, इंडिया इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ में बहुत अच्छा कर रहा था. बाद में even during मनमोहन सिंह एरा, India was growing very well. China needed big market. India was that big market. So economically we were very significant for each other. जो skirmishes थे, like border skirmishes, that those were also not that high, and relations strengthened. The positive turn in India-China relationship since the beginning of 21st century. One thing that led to this positive turn was that we decided, let us not allow political difference to come in the way of exploiting economic opportunities, and that is why you will see India-China trade, which was only $2.2 billion ka, way back in 2000, went to $127 billion in FY20. फिर at international forums also we were cooperating. जैसे when it came to climate change negotiation, India and China was leading the side of developing world. When we wanted reforms at IMF, World Bank, it was India, China who were kind of working together to have more say for the newly emerging countries. So there was cooperation at this level also. फिर there have been many significant bilateral visits also. President Xi Jinping visited India in September 2014. Prime Minister Modi visited China in May 2015. I say, acha, these visits happened earlier also, but here I'm emphasizing what happened in the last 10 years. So last 10 years, there were measures going on for improving the relations. In fact, President Pranab Mukherjee visited China again in 2016. We were also meeting regularly at G20, BRICS, and other such summits. But then this Doklam crisis occurred. Doklam crisis, India, Bhutan और चाइना के ट्राई जंक्शन पे एक रीजन था, वहां पे चाइना was trying to illegally occupy it. It was Bhutan's territory, but India defended it. India helped Bhutan. तो वहां पे ये crisis हुआ, which again increased tensions. But surprising everyone, in 2018 and 2019, two informal summits were held, one in Wuhan and other in Mahabalipuram, where informal summit, like when formal summit happens, we go with a lot of agenda. These are the agreements which will be signed, these are the decisions which will be made. But this was not like that. This was for increasing personal rapport between the two leaders, President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, and ensuring that a message, a strategic guidance goes to defense forces and everyone ki let us take our relations in the positive direction. So after Doklam crisis, when relations could have worsened in 2018 and 2019, we saw two informal summits between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, which was again the first 2000 से 2019 तक इतना बड़ा कोई crisis नहीं आया India China relations. But there were issues. We'll talk about those issues. But then Galwan crisis and nosediving of bilateral relationship. 20 of our soldiers were killed there. Unknown number of Chinese soldiers also. They have not published the numbers. Experts say that the number of deaths on their side may have been much higher than that of India. This happened, and after that 2020, 21, 22, 23 was primarily going in de-escalating the situation. That is what happened. At the time, India responded to Beijing's bid to unilaterally change the status quo on the LAC by declaring that business as usual between the two countries was over. We took several measures. They say we banned 300 plus Chinese apps, including TikTok. Chinese telecom companies were not allowed to roll out 5G services in India, or their rollout of 5G services were restricted. We also imposed several FDI restrictions. Jaise, we came up with a rule where we said that companies based in nations which share land border with India could only invest after obtaining official government permission. अब countries who share land border with India, उनमें से किसके पास invest करने की औकात है? China. So it was basically directed at China. So we had imposed these kind of restrictions also after the 2020 Galwan crisis. यहाँ पे ये समझ में आया? And all the measures here. So you'll see tensions rose, trade slowed, flights stopped, and two nations went into a broader diplomatic freeze. After this bilateral engagement primarily focused on de-escalating the situation and disengagement on the LAC. This was the primary purpose for 2-3 years. But now in 2024 and 25, यहाँ से अपना एग्जाम सेंट्रिक चीजें आती है. The background that I told you, background that I explained, वो बस आपको एक बार पढ़ना है just to get a broad framework कि what has happened over the years. If an exam question would be asked, it would be asked from what's happening right now. International, it's not a history paper. Please note, GS2 is a IR paper. तो IR में आपसे पूछा जाए अभी इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस में क्या चल रहा है? How can we improve it? How can we counter it? Right? Those are the things which would be asked, and that is why जो भी हमने अभी तक पढ़ा वो you keep on reading whenever you come to this booklet. एक बार देख लो, but before exam, even if you are not able to go through that, that's fine. That's not important. क्यों पढ़ाया गया है? Because क्यों बताया गया है? So that you will have a broader understanding of our relationship. I could have added more points. I could have added the role of who's in town. He was the president between 2003 to 2013. Us time India China relations were very good. I could have talked about his role. I could have talked about role of a lot of other prime ministers and all. We could have discussed this in more detail, but then it would have become a history lesson rather than IR wala topic. We want to cover it from the perspective. मैंने क्या बोला? History, geography आपको खुद से पढ़ना है. That's not I'm going to teach you. Okay. So do MMP students need to attend this lecture or this will be covered in MMP as well? हाँ, आपके MMP में IR तो है ना, मेंस मास्टर्स प्रोग्राम में जो बच्चे एनरोल्ड है उसमें IR कवर होगा, बट वहाँ पे चंदन सर कवर करेंगे जो हमारे IR के टीचर है. मैं लेवल अप का करंट अफेयर्स का टीचर हूँ, तो यहाँ पे मैं करंट अफेयर्स के पर्सपेक्टिव से चीजों को कवर करता हूँ. आपको जो मेंस मास्टर्स प्रोग्राम है वहाँ पे GS3 इज माय रिस्पांसिबिलिटी, GS2 इज द रिस्पांसिबिलिटी ऑफ बाबू सर, साहिल सर एंड चंदन सर. बाबू सर विल डील विद polity governance, Sahil sir will deal with social justice and society part of the GS1 and Chandan sir will deal with IR, है ना. बाकी जो बच्चे करंट अफेयर्स में हैं उनके लिए IR मैं भी यहाँ पे पूरा कवर करूंगा ही, कोई इशू नहीं. Okay, let's come back. What happened in 2024 and 25? What has happened so far? पिछले एक साल में जो न्यूज़पेपर आर्टिकल्स आए हैं, अब देखो अगेन I can discuss all these things in a lot more detail जो इंडिया चाइना के नोट से आपके 40 पेज के हो रखे हो, but that's not needed. Please understand, we are preparing for an exam. We should always focus on how will we do well in this examination, not in doing research कि चलो इंडिया चाइना पे PhD करते हैं, कन्हैया कुमार इंडिया अफ्रीका पे कर रहे हैं, हम इंडिया चाइना पे करते हैं और ये अपनी PhD कंप्लीट करने में 10 साल लगाते हैं, फिर जॉब भी नहीं लेते. ऐसा हो जाएगा ना कि आप वो जब when you are not focused on exam, you will keep on studying unnecessary things and you will not be clearing this examination. That is why we will limit to the things which we need to write in our answers. The examples that we need to give in our answers, our notes should only have that. And that is why I told you उससे पहले अब तक जो पढ़ा, that's not going to be asked in GS2 IR paper. That is just for what? That is for your background understanding, so that आप आगे की चीजें ज्यादा अच्छे से समझ पाओगे. Are we getting this? Now, a thaw and normalization in 2024-25, it began. Achha, actually, the beginning comes from a chance that Trump would win elections. There was like elections happened in November 2024, but usse pehle opinion polls and everything tell us, no, what is the scenario. And last time when Trump had become president, Trump had this trade war with China. So from Chinese side also there was, let us, if the Trump comes there, we should have cordial relation with India. And from Indian side also, we'll understand India needs good relation with China for many reasons. We'll understand that. Our businesses were saying, stop this conflict. Our semiconductor industry is suffering. We're losing lakhs of jobs. Our businesses were saying that. We'll understand that. But because of this, background kahan aaya? Background aaya our businesses and chance that Trump would get elected. Trump got elected in November. Usse pehle bhi to thawing of in relationship was taking place. Normalization was taking place. Normalization started with the meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping during 16th BRICS summit at Kazan in 2024. यहाँ पे they met after many years. They met face to face after many years. It was here that both the countries started normalizing our relations, gave directions. Here, joint patrolling should start. Yeah, India was given access to grazing areas, which was which India could not access after the 2020 crisis. Some changes occurred. We don't have to go in the details there. But BRICS summit in Russia in 2024 was one major event where India, China started showing the world that yes, we are coming together. reinitiation of engagement between special representative on border issue in 2024 and 2025. तो अभी ना जब हम इंडिया चाइना बॉर्डर इशू में जाएंगे, we'll see that in 2003 we started a special representative mechanism of for discussing the border issue. जिसे इंडिया में इंडिया से नेशनल सिक्योरिटी एडवाइजर इज अ वेरी हाई ऑफिस इन इंडिया. He from India's side and similar position from China's side, they come as special representative and discuss border issue, try to resolve border issue. After 2020 they had not met, but they started meeting again in 2024. They met. Abhi recently in 2025 they've again met to take ahead the border discussions. फिर अगस्त 2025 में चाइनीज फॉरेन मिनिस्टर वांग यी विजिटेड इंडिया इन अगस्त 2025. पीएम मोदी विजिटेड बीजिंग after 7 years. 2018 में during informal Wuhan summit he had gone to Beijing. It was 7 years back. After 7 years he visited Beijing to attend SCO summit. On the sidelines he also met Chinese President Xi Jinping. The visit is seen as a deliberate pivot from confrontation to conversation. मुझे ये अच्छा लगा. Shashi Tharoor had written this. He at the SCO summit, what did we show? We showed a deliberate pivot from fighting, from confrontation to conversation. Now, क्या हुआ इन मीटिंग्स में? We saying कि ब्रिक्स समिट में मिले, वहां पे बातें हुई. We are saying कि their foreign minister came, the Indian NSA went there for special representative talk. Their similar of their NSA, वो NSA नहीं बोलते. There are other offices in the communist system. That person came to India for special representative discussions on border and all. All this happened. उसका impact क्या हुआ है? How do we say? So these meetings are showing that at political level we are engaging, at bureaucratic level we are engaging, at diplomatic level we are engaging. But what has been the outcome? You will see these are the outcomes. India and China have also agreed to resume border trade at 3 points. We have restarted direct. We have agreed to restart direct flights. We have expanded the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra slots for pilgrims, and visa restrictions are being eased. China has also lifted curbs on exports of fertilizers. आज से ना a few months back, if I was teaching you, I would have taught you that China is weaponizing fertilizers also. Diammonium phosphate, we are import dependent for its constituents, and China had put restrictions on that. That has been eased. Rare earth magnets, which was going to impact our electric vehicle sector, uska supply was restricted earlier by China. It has been eased, as well as boring machines. These boring machines are used to drill for creating bigger infrastructure. Uspe bhi China had put restrictions. It has also been eased. These are the three things which India had requested when Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar visited China in July 2025, and in August there have been news about easing of all these restrictions. ऐसे ही in a recent interview, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji had said कि जो FDI restrictions है ना, that can also be eased. That has not been eased yet. हमने देखा था. What was the FDI restriction? Countries which has land borders with India, they will need government approval for investment, right? Abhi recently, a few days back only, our finance minister had said that we are open to easing that restriction also, provided we get more access to Chinese market. While हमारा trade बहुत बड़ा है, but trade में we are mostly importing things, because China has imposed a lot of restriction on the things that we can export. Things like हम service sector में अच्छे हैं. We could have provided a lot of services to China, but there are restrictions imposed there. So provided their market is eased or our access to their market increases, we are open to reducing this restriction also. So यहाँ पे we are saying manifestation of normalization. Meetings हो रही हैं, leaders are moving across the country. It is expected कि Xi Jinping may visit India this year. नहीं, it's this नहीं, next year Xi Jinping may visit India. So leaders are moving across, negotiations have started, and a lot of easing of business is taking place, right? These are all manifestation of normalization. कि हाँ, normalization is occurring, but why? Why is this normalization? Why this thaw? That is more important. So do the new students need to watch all the content that is covered in? But a new student means your batch is starting today. It's my responsibility that from today, everything that you need for your preparation is done. You don't have to watch any. आपका बैच ही आज शुरू हो रहा है तो आप पुराने लेक्चर्स क्यों देखो? आपका बैच आज शुरू हो रहा है. I had a current affairs batch starting in June also, but you don't have to watch those lectures. Don't worry about it. आपके next 10-11 months में इस पूरे period में we will cover everything that is needed. चाहे वो 2 साल पुराना हो, 3 साल पुराना हो, if that is needed for your exam, we will cover it. Okay. Now come back to this. कि why the normalization, why the thaw in relationship. एक तो था कि military tensions have eased. 2020 में tensions were at its peak, and after that several efforts were taken for disengagement, and that generally remains a big issue. But other than that, there were some other major issues. एक था India's need of technology and capital. India also needed good relations with China. Why? देखो, to achieve India's goal of becoming third largest economy of the world, we need high economic growth rate, and that would happen with a lot of technology and capital. Now, American technology or American capital is doubtful because of the Make America Great Again, है ना? ट्रम्प के tantrums अच्छा है है ना? So because of that, there are about tariff war indicates that. So we need some other place somewhere the latest technologies, the more capital could come, and China can play that role. China is technologically doing very well. China has a lot of capital. So in fact, even industries in India, major corporations in India have made a pitch for easing investment curbs on China. Companies in electronics manufacturing had complained that the lack of visas and clearance for suppliers. There were visa restrictions, so Chinese suppliers, etc., were not able to come to India. So lack of visa clearance for suppliers had cost them $15 billion in losses and 1 lakh jobs between 2020 and 2024. So another reason for normalization is what? The requirement of capital and investment. And then there is geopolitics. What is the geopolitical aspect? Let us understand that. Sir, what about Yarlung Zangpo Dam construction near AP? Beta, we'll talk about that, na? Don't worry. हम इंडिया चाइना वाटर इशू को भी डिस्कस करेंगे एंड देयर विल अंडरस्टैंड दोज डायमेंशंस आल्सो. अभी विल कम टू मेजर इश्यूज कि मेजर इश्यूज क्या क्या है, वहां पे विल मेंशन इट ब्रीफली. बट जैसे वी आर डिस्कसिंग इंडिया चाइना बॉर्डर सेपरेटली इन अ लॉट ऑफ डिटेल, इन द सेम वे इंडिया चाइना वाटर इशू विल आल्सो बी डिस्कस्ड सेपरेटली इन अ लॉट ऑफ डिटेल. अभी वी आर अंडरस्टैंडिंग द ब्रॉडर लेवल पे व्हाट इज हैपनिंग टू द इंडिया चाइना रिलेशंस. So we are trying to understand why the recent thaw, why the recent normalization. एक, border tensions reduced a bit. दूसरा, the requirement for technology and capital. And तीसरा, the changes in the geopolitical level that's taking place. जैसे Washington has shifted its position towards Pakistan and China. How you will see that Trump administration is simultaneously moving closer to Beijing and Islamabad. अब देखो, China buys more oil from Russia. China has bigger trade surplus with US, or US has bigger deficit with China, but still the tariff imposed on China is lesser than that of India. Trump is giving a lot of time to China. Similarly, Trump has become, or US has become unnecessarily close to Pakistan. In June 2025, Trump hosted Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir. Pakistan endorsed Trump for Nobel Peace Prize. No, Trump को Nobel Peace Prize. Islamabad endorsed Trump for Nobel Peace Prize. The Pakistani Army Chief is being hosted by Trump. Then China. This is an indication of they going closer. But China is worried about this. While China is able to ensure कि a lot of tariff is not imposed on them by US, but China is worried about this sudden Washington Islamabad proximity. Why? There are two things. They are thinking, or the analysts say that why does US need to get so close to Pakistan? Pakistan के पास तो कुछ भी नहीं है. Pakistan has location. In long term, US wants to counter China, counter China's growth. Usme one way by which they can do it is by preventing their access to Arabian Sea directly. And how do they access Arabian Sea? Through China-Pakistan economic corridor. So Chinese think, or some Chinese analysts think, that why all of a sudden US has got very close to Pakistan. वैसे US terrorism करता रहता है, and it's getting close to the hub of terrorism. Why is it so? One, it may be because of the because they want to disrupt CPC corridor. Second, they may be trying to access Chinese weapons to understand their efficacy. If they have to counter China, they have to also understand and how well the Chinese weapon function. It may be because of that, and Pakistan has access to a lot of Chinese weapons, a lot of Chinese technology. So by making US and Pakistan come closer, US may be looking at these things. But for us, whatever happens, US Pakistan se bahut close aa jaye and peels it away from China, or China is able to keep Pakistan with itself. Kisi bhi scenario mein, if we have good relations with China, that could be beneficial for us, because US और India के बीच में थोड़ी tussle. Yesterday the news changed. Yesterday the news changed, है ना? इसीलिए बोलो IR is very dynamic. We cannot keep talking about history. आप जब IR के लिए prepare करोगे, it should be done in current affairs program only, right? क्योंकि here you will get the latest things. So the changing geopolitics demand that when US is getting close to Pakistan, we should also have a pivot in China. Why? To counter that. To counter that, how? US should know while they bring Pakistan in their domain, if they are trying to do that, Pakistan should not be allowed to do any anti-India activity. India should be able to benefit from that. India should be able to benefit from Pakistan US closeness. And if that doesn't happen, even then improved relation between India and China would prevent any anti-India activity, or would reduce the scope of anti-India activities from Pakistan. India hopes that with its pivot to China, it can exploit the first of these trends while preempting any negative fallout from the second. Okay, now Trump 2.0 and tariff war has become another issue. India have China faced the tariff issue in the last presidency of Trump. India is facing it right now, though China has been given some time, but China has also been threatened with higher tariffs. In that scenario, it is important to increase trade and investment between these two large economies, so that our dependency on US would reduce and their tariff will not have a lot of impact. These are some of the reasons because of which the normalization, the thaw is happening, right? Otherwise वो leaders same ही थे. Prime Minister Modi, Xi Jinping were the leaders when 2017 crisis occurred, when 2020 crisis occurred. It is the changes in the geopolitics, the need, the requirement of the countries which lead to what? Which lead to the changes in the bilateral relations. कौन है ये श्रेयस? श्रेयस, don't do this. Okay, let's come back. अब आते हैं important part. देखो, this thing may change. जो हमने अभी पढ़ा, this may change in 6 months. In 6 months क्या पता इंडिया यूएस बहुत क्लोज आ जाए, इंडिया चाइना में टेंशन बढ़ जाए, पाकिस्तान इंडिया में टेंशन बढ़ जाए, and the normalization and thaw of 2025, वो I will perhaps remove it from the notes and we'll talk about the new stuff. But what is not going to change is the enduring challenges in India-China relations. Let's talk about it. The major issues in India-China relations. Biggest problem, the territorial or border dispute. The most contentious issue between the two countries, the most important factor because of which everything keeps going normally and suddenly we end up fighting, is the border dispute and territorial dispute. Border मतलब border आगे shift कर दो territory, तो border dispute or territorial dispute. We अभी will study this as a separate topic in a lot of detail, right from its origin to which are the places which are disputed. Then the Tibet, Dalai Lama and other Tibetan refugees issues. They say the presence of Dalai Lama in India and the succession question recently. Who will be the next Dalai Lama? This is also leading to increased tension between India and China. Fir river water sharing and dam construction. China has started construction of a massive hydropower project, thrice the size of largest hydropower project in the world, without considering the interest of lower riparian state, that is India. So this makes us look at China with distrust. China is not taking care of India's sensitivities or sensitivity of a lower riparian nation. तो हमसे पूछा जाए कि India China relations में what are the major point of contention? तो points of contention we will say, पहला border dispute, दूसरा दलाई लामा वाला issue या Tibetan refugee वाला issue, तीसरा water dispute. Then another issue which has emerged in recent years is the trade deficit. In 2023, China's export to India was $125 billion. India's export to China was $18 billion. There is a huge trade deficit. A lot of our forex goes to fulfill this trade deficit. Initially, it was thought, in early 2000, it was thought that when India and China trade relations improve, their dependency on each other will improve. They will come closer and even other problems will become solvable. But rather than that, the trade has become a point of dispute. India says that you are following too protective a regime, too protective policies and not allowing your access to our products, access of your market to our products, and that is why this is happening. So this has become a bone of contention between India and China. Then China's aggressive military expansion. जैसे चाइना का जो बजट है in the latest financial year for defense, it's $245 billion. It's only second to US, which is of $900 billion. इंडिया का टोटल बजट साइज कितना है? नॉट ऑफ डिफेंस, वो बजट नहीं, जीडीपी है. बजट कितना है? 50 लाख करोड़. FY26 के लिए इट इज 50 लाख करोड़, है ना. उसे अगर आप उसमें कन्वर्ट करोगे कि डॉलर्स में कन्वर्ट करोगे कितना होगा? रुपीस 50 लाख करोड़ को डॉलर में कन्वर्ट करोगे कितना? 500 रफली 500 या 600 मिलियन डॉलर्स, बिलियन डॉलर, 600 बिलियन डॉलर्स. आर वी अंडरस्टैंडिंग? ये इंडिया का टोटल बजट है. रफली दिस इज इंडिया टोटल बजट एंड उसका आधा क्या है? चाइना का डिफेंस बजट. उससे ज्यादा यूएस का डिफेंस बजट है. Why do we need to focus on growth, development, science and technology advancement rather than क्या कहता था अमेरिका? Some people think that no, कि वो नहीं. What do we have to focus on? We have to understand if we want a secure nation, we'll have to increase our defense budget. And when would that improve? When will that increase? When we are growing economically. So there's a huge variation. So huge variation may not have been that big a deal if we didn't have very tense relations. We have very tense relation, and this huge variation can be very disastrous for India. So India is substantially outclassed by China right now. PLA maintains over 1 lakh soldiers along with tanks, howitzers, surface-to-air missiles, heavy weaponry in the icy Himalayan heights of Ladakh. Further, there is a report on China stocking up into nuclear weaponry. Well, now अब ये speculations हो सकते हैं, but SIPRI and other reliable agencies suggest that in recent past Beijing has added another 100 nuclear warheads. Whereas जैसे रशिया है, यूके है, फ्रांस है, यूएस है, they talk about how do we reduce our nuclear weapons. China, as per SIPRI, is increasing its number of nuclear weapons, and this also is seen with suspicion by India. And because हम दोनों के tense relation है, we also end up spending more money on defense. In the process, they think कि उन्हें भी इंडिया को काउंटर करना है, and this cycle continues. Another point, why, what key source of tension between India-China relation? सोच रहे हो मुझे ये पॉइंट से आपसे पूछा जाए क्या है? बॉर्डर डिस्प्यूट, दलाई लामा इशू, वाटर, ट्रेड, डिफेंस, मिलिट्री एक्सपेंशन ऑफ चाइना, देन weaponization of India's dependencies on China. This is also very important. Weaponization of India's dependency on China. What is meant by this? India is dependent on China for certain things, and China is using it for strategic for geopolitical purpose. For example, China restricted the supply of rare earth magnets, specialized fertilizers, and tunnel boring machines. Abhi recently they have allowed it again, but it was restricted when there was a tension between India-China relations. And say without rare earth magnets or rare earth metals, what happens? A lot of electronics and electric vehicle sector suffers. Similarly, specialized fertilizers are diammonium phosphate, पूरा हम चाइना पे dependent है. Supply of that would get impacted. India's agriculture sector suffers. ऐसे ही tunnel boring machines are needed for creating big infrastructure project because you have to drill a lot, and those huge capital goods also come from China. इन सब पे restrictions लग गए थे. Foxconn was asked to withdraw several hundred Chinese technicians from factories in India. What happened here? देखो, when we talk about semiconductor sector or when we talk about electronic sector, it's not just the technology. We do not also have the human resource. So, a lot of human resource, a lot of technically skilled people in India's semiconductor industry or the electronics industry are from China. Foxconn has factories in India. वहाँ पे who were working? Chinese citizens were working. China directly or indirectly asked them to come back, making our semiconductor industry suffer and not being able to grow, and thus China we not being able to go in a position where we will be able to compete with China. ऐसे ही many of these restrictions are not formalized. Not formalized means it goes on the basis of verbal orders, and thus you cannot even counter it. ऐसे कोई government order दे कि these 300 people should come back, we'll counter it. But here, through verbal communication, this happens. Why? How would that happen? अच्छा ये bore machine जानी है, let's do this. इसे फंसा के रख लो. Customs पे some document is missing, something like that. They will do that. So that what happens? There is no mechanism to properly counter it. Plus, India's interest get affected. What are the reasons for it? Why does this happen? Why these resources are weaponized? Why our dependency on India is weaponized? इसमें ना शशि थरूर का एक और आर्टिकल था कुछ दिन पहले, not yesterday, not in the Chindia वाला article. Earlier, it is seen as a meticulously calibrated strategy designed to arrest India's burgeoning manufacturing ambition and to perpetuate a unipolar Asia under Beijing's overreaching economic hegemony. Basically, to counter India's economic growth, so that अब देखो right now in electronics manufacturing India cannot compete with China, but if India is able to initially through transfer of technology, through human resource coming from China, create a system. Do we have a lot of human resource? उनको भी train करके we will start doing that. China doesn't want that to happen. The aim is to keep India dependent on Chinese input and prevent it from developing a truly self-reliant, high-value manufacturing base. Recent normalization may have led to easing of supply, but the past behavior will always keep India distrustful towards China's intention. ये जो एक paragraph है, this I have taken from an article from Shashi Tharoor. So another key issue in India-China relation is what? Weaponization of India's dependency on China. It can be for rare earth metals, it can be for huge capital goods, it can be for fertilizers, it can be for human resource. उन सबको China can use, and China uses whenever it wants, it uses those things. क्या समझ में आ रहा है हमें? Then तो ये तो bilateral issues थे, bilateral issues which are bone of contention between India-China relation. Then there are other issues, जैसे China's all-weather friendship with Pakistan. We can talk a lot about it, but let's talk about the time of Operation Sindoor. पहले पहलगाम में जब अटैक हुआ, China did not criticize it. फिर even during Operation Sindoor, China provided multifaceted support in the form of intelligence and military technology to Pakistan. At the SCO Defence Ministers Forum in June 2025, India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh rejected the document which failed to condemn cross-border terrorism. SCO Defence Minister meet में the final document did not have criticism for cross-border terrorism emanating from Pakistan. Rajnath Singh did not sign it, but where was this meeting being held? China. So China का close friendship with Pakistan is visible through these recent acts. From after 1965, China and Pakistan have remained all-weather friends. फिर China's increasing footprint in South Asia, China's increasing influence in South Asia. Not only एक तो China Pakistan aspect है ही, but you will see अभी जो अपन बांग्लादेश के acting prime minister है, he visited China, right? Similarly, China convened a trilateral meeting with Pakistan and Bangladesh during China South Asia Cooperation Forum in Kunming. China's this was an attempt to have more influence around India. Similarly, China's expanding footprint in South Asia, वो बांग्लादेश में पोर्ट बनाने की कोशिश करते हैं, म्यांमार में करते हैं, श्रीलंका में करते हैं, पाकिस्तान तो है ही, मालदीव्स में भी they do it. It is seen by India as an effort to surround India from all the sides. Then China's infrastructure projects such as Belt and Road initiatives. While it's okay for them to invest a lot in creating infrastructure project, but they should not hamper India's integrity and sovereignty. And through projects of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor का project, it passes through Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So again, China did not consider India's sensitivities there when these projects are getting implemented. फिर US-India rapprochement. अच्छा, अब पता है India-US also have not had great relations. कभी ऐसा नहीं रहा कि India-US have been close friend, हाथ में हाथ डाल के चल रहे हैं. Initially तो till the time of Cold War, India was associated closely with US. India was seen as someone who was close to USSR. Tensions थी. तो China has remained, US had remained very close to Pakistan. But after 1990s, from 21st century, यहाँ भी यही बोलेंगे, from 21st century, you will see relations changing. आप जब अपने पेरेंट्स से पूछोगे ना, तो they will perhaps tell you कि when they were kids or when they were in colleges or उस टाइम पे ना, they did not see a lot of Indian prime minister visiting US or US presidents coming to India. But in our times, we will see they coming to India, we going there, like Manmohan Singh visiting, who was the prime minister till 2016, Barack Obama, है ना? Barack Obama coming to India, my friend Obama, my dear friend Donald Trump, right? वो हो रहा है ना? Indian prime minister visiting there. आपको याद होगा Manmohan Singh's visit to US was, वहाँ पे he gave a speech, I think in their parliament also. उनको senate और जो बोलते हैं, he visited that place. He was so things have changed since 2000. Things have changed and India US is also getting closer. अब उसका reason ये हो सकता है because China is emerging as a counter to US. So US wanted to have better relations with countries like India, with which it will be able to better handle China. But through that, what has happened is India US is getting closer. There are institutions like Quad, जहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? There are institutions like Quad where India, US, Japan, Australia, they're collaborating, but China sees those institutions as measures to counter it. ये भी एक जैसे इंडिया चाइना पाकिस्तान रिलेशन बिकम अ पॉइंट ऑफ कंटेंशन फॉर इंडिया एंड हैम्पर्स इंडिया चाइना रिलेशंस, ऐसे ही इंडिया यूएस रिलेशंस बिकम अ पॉइंट ऑफ कंटेंशन फॉर China and hampers India China relations. Then proxy struggle around the Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea and Africa, वो मालदीव्स में भी हो सकता है, वो अफ्रीका में भी है कि China is trying to get resources, India is trying to get resources, there are efforts to outcompete each other. अब generally China outcompetes us because of lots of resources that they have. फिर China's opposition to India on international forums, जैसे China is kind of vetoing India's NSG membership. NSG का member बनने के लिए every member of the existing NSG should agree to it. China is one country which has not allowed India to become a full-time member of Nuclear Suppliers Group (NSG). Similarly, China keeps on raising technical blocks in getting Pakistani terrorists listed under the UNSC sanctions. उसमें भी क्या होता है? Consensus चाहिए होता है. And China always brings some technical ground on the basis of which those terrorists are not listed in the UNSC sanction, and thus a lot of measures cannot be taken against them. So in international forums पे जो China opposes India, that leads to what? That leads to India-China relations deteriorating, and because of all these factors, because of all the things that we have discussed, there are security dilemma and trust deficit between India and China. और ये ना आज से एक साल पहले भी ये था. Example would have changed. India, China, Pakistan close relation का example में we would not have talked about how China helped Pakistan during Operation Sindoor and all. We would not have talked about those. But otherwise, India-China relations के जो main contentious issues है वो ये है. This doesn't change. You will even in your exams you will give different examples perhaps, but these dimensions will not change. Okay, now do you all understand what is NSG? Nuclear Suppliers Group NSG क्या होता है? सबको पता है ना? Some student has asked it, please explain a bit about NSG. I'll just take 1 minute and explain it. देखो थोड़ा बैकग्राउंड में जाओगे. 1970s में इंडिया टेस्टेड न्यूक्लियर वेपन. इंडिया ने न्यूक्लियर वेपन बना लिया था, है ना? अब द वर्ल्ड रियलाइज्ड और P5 कंट्रीज रियलाइज्ड कि यार we didn't give them technology to make nuclear weapon, but just by using civil nuclear energy technology, what were we getting? We were getting technology for energy production. India was able to make nuclear weapon. So to prevent, so ऐसे तो other countries would also be able to make nuclear weapon. To prevent this from happening, they created a group known as NSG. NSG के members agreed on this कि यार only P5 countries will have nuclear weapons and rest of us will not make nuclear weapons from and the material that is being given to us, it will be only used for what? For energy purpose. And people who do not agree to this, who will not be part of NSG, these NSG members will not supply them nuclear material even for energy production. अब India was not part of NSG because India was like हमारा तो nuclear weapon है, we are a nuclear weapon nation. So India was not being supplied material for nuclear energy because India is not a member of NSG. But in 2007-8 India got waiver from NSG because India's behavior was good. India long term में peaceful activities में involved है, तो India was given waiver कि India is not a member of NSG. Still NSG members will be able to supply them nuclear energy के लिए various technology and material. And that is why you will see कि we have been able to sign civil nuclear deal with Canada, Japan and so many other countries because now they are allowed to supply us with those nuclear material. Now ये तो waiver था, NSG has given us waiver, but waiver can be temporary, no? Permanent solution will be India becomes a member of NSG. China is already a member of NSC. China says कि नहीं, India will not become a member of NSC, or China says let's make Pakistan also a member of NSC. All weather friendship, है ना. तो we will study NSC in more details जब हम international bodies पढ़ रहे हैं, है ना. बट अभी के लिए इतना जान लो कि इंडिया वांट्स टू बिकम अ मेंबर ऑफ एनएससी. वहां पे मेंबरशिप के लिए द एग्जिस्टिंग मेंबर्स शुड हैव, नो वन शुड डिनाई your admission, only then you will be able to do that, and China has been denying India's admission to NSC. क्या हमें समझ में आया? पक्का. तो इंडिया चाइना रिलेशंस में मेजर कंटेंशियस इश्यूज क्या है? आई होप वी हैव क्लैरिटी. I hope we understand that. Now, way forward and conclusion. What should be the way forward now? India Pakistan बोलो, India China relations. India China relations में what should be the way forward? First thing that we say, और पता है ये जो way forward है ना, इसे आप ना हर जगह यूज कर पाओगे. Suppose the question is about India China border issue or India China water issue. Mostly the same dimensions will be discussed. First thing should be high level political consensus. What is this? Here we are saying is, देखो, on both the sides, on China's side or India's side, there has to be a political consensus कि यार we have to resolve these conflicts. Sometimes what happens, देखो, China में there is a reluctance in resolving the border dispute, because border dispute जब resolve होगा, China will have to compromise on something, India will have to compromise on something. ऐसा नहीं है ना, चाइना विल से कि नहीं मैं अरुणाचल भी ले रहा हूँ, मैं एक्साइज भी ले रहा हूँ, इंडिया विल नॉट गेट इट. नो, इट्स देयर विल बी सम कॉम्प्रोमाइजेस मेड ऑन बोथ द साइड्स. बट व्हेन चाइना विल हैव टू मेक कॉम्प्रोमाइजेस, इट विल सी or it will show India at equal footing with China, right? And China doesn't want to do that. On many occasions, China is not very much interested in resolving this the border dispute. It wants its own way. Else, in every dispute, the country will try. The other countries will try to do what? Will try to reach some compromise. So one thing that we'll need is on both the sides, there has to be a political consensus. Here we have to resolve these disputes. Without this political consensus, even if on one side there is this ki nahi, this dispute is okay, this dispute, there can be a problem. So the top leadership of both the countries need to create strong willingness to resolve main conflicts, including the border issue. Here they will have to negotiate domestic politics and ensure proper messaging among citizens. There is also a need to reduce politicization of bilateral ties so that future concessions don't face public opposition. अब इसमें क्या बोल रहे हैं? एक तो the leaders will have to negotiate the domestic politics. अब ऐसे समझो, today, let's say tomorrow the dispute is getting resolved. Dispute में ऐसा हो जाए कि आधा अक्साई चीन हमें मिल गया, आधा अक्साई चीन पाकिस्तान चाइना को चला गया. Suppose something like that happens. The opposition in India, no matter who is in opposition at that time, will say तुमने देश को बेच दिया. अगर कांग्रेस opposition में, they will say this. अगर बीजेपी opposition में, they will say this. So the leader who want to resolve at political level, when decision will come, you will have to negotiate the domestic politics also. And at the same time, we are also saying there has to be a depoliticization of bilateral relation. हम ना, the moment we politicize something, making concessions become impossible. अभी in India China relation, even in China, India is seen as a big enemy. Even in India, China is seen as a huge enemy. Common people are like, China ये कर देंगे, China को वो कर देंगे. This keeps on happening while everyone uses Chinese phone. Yesterday I was talking to a friend, वो क्या phone लेना है, वो बोल रहा था कि कोई OnePlus Nord लेगा 20-25 हज़ार का. I was like, अबे Chinese phone है मत ले. अच्छा Chinese है क्या? क्या लूँ? मैंने कहा Samsung का ले ले. इंडियन ऑप्शन तो था नहीं ना. मैंने कहा सैमसंग का ले ले. वो बोलता है सैमसंग के सस्ते वाले फोन ना बहुत चलते नहीं है, महंगे वाले बहुत चलते हैं. मैंने कहा अच्छा मुझे ये नहीं पता. मैंने फिर बोला गूगल वाला ले ले, गूगल पिक्सल का कुछ वो वर्जन. डोंट टेक चाइनीज वन. है ना, हमारे अंदर है कि नहीं चाइना का नहीं. Now, when we give concession to China tomorrow, these people would say that this government is wrong. And why is this happening? Because we have politicized bilateral issues this much. So, we are saying high level political consensus ki disputes have to be resolved. Pehla, steps for negotiating domestic politics, and third one, depoliticizing the issue. ये चाहे इंडिया चाइना बॉर्डर इशू रिजॉल्व होना, इंडिया चाइना वाटर इशू रिजॉल्व होना, कोई भी होना, we'll have to talk about this. Second thing, sustained and comprehensive engagement at highest political diplomatic levels. Sustained engagement, like tussle हो रहा है फिर भी बात चल रही है, differences है फिर भी बात चल रही है, at highest level. And इसमें we can also have and इसमें there are two things. One, discuss full gamut of bilateral relationship, not only the border issue, not only the trade issue, not only the water issue, on every level negotiation should happen, and there should be a early harvest focus also. What is this early harvest focus? जो ना less contentious issues हैं, if they are getting resolved first, जैसे border issue will be perhaps the last thing to get resolved, but trade deficit वाला issue can be resolved faster. Let us resolve it faster so that we have one less bone of contention plus one extra level where we are cooperating, one extra level where we are dependent on each other. At that time, reaching some conclusion on the bigger issues, more contentious issues would also be possible. तो वे देखो, अब ये वे फॉरवर्ड आपका फिर से समझ रहे हो, इंडिया चाइना बॉर्डर इशू में भी लिख सकते हो, इंडिया चाइना वाटर इश्यूज में भी लिख सकते हो. थर्ड थिंग, प्रॉपर डिमार्केशन एंड जॉइंट पेट्रोलिंग ऑफ एलएसी. अभी पता है प्रॉब्लम क्या है? प्रॉब्लम ये है कि व्हाट इज एलएसी, उस पर भी लड़ाई है. एक तो लड़ाई इस बात की, देयर इज फाइट ऑन द ग्राउंड की इंडिया का है पूरा अक्साई चेन एंड चाइना हैज इलीगली ऑक्युपाइड इट. फाइन, but even this was like China has illegally occupied it, but till what point has China illegally occupied it? What is the line of actual control? Even there we have what? Differences, and that is why we end up fighting. So what we need to do is we need to come up with a mechanism to demarcate LAC and joint pit. Till the time we are not able to come to a conclusion on what will happen to Aksai Chin, तब तक ये तो हो ना कि जो ऑलरेडी जो एग्जिस्टिंग LAC है उस पे तो लड़ाई ना कर रहे हो कि ये हमारा है वो हमारा है. Are we getting this? Then enhanced economic cooperation. Now please note जो कुछ पॉइंट्स हम यहाँ बोलने जा रहे हैं, this will talk about in bilateral relation with every country. आप इंडिया पाकिस्तान के रिलेशन इंप्रूव करवाना चाहोगे, there will be enhanced economic cooperation, increasing people to people contact, investment in stock, academic and policy research of that country. These dimensions would be there in India Pakistan also, India US also, वो रहेगा ही. India Russia also, India Russia relations को और कैसे strengthen करें? Enhance economic cooperation. India should leverage its huge market to get better access for its goods and services in Chinese market. Chinese capital flow in core manufacturing sector should be allowed so that India's manufacturing sector can grow, and set up institutional mechanism to handle key economic and trade issues in future. Are we getting this? Then increasing people to people cooperation. This will be possible with more trade, sustained tourism, and enhanced cultural, academic and business exchanges. This will be crucial for improving public perception and trust. They say very few Indians go to China for tourism purpose. Very few Chinese come to India. ऐसे very few Indians go to China for studies. Very few Chinese come to India for studies. Like because of this, no, we do not understand each other's culture, each other's way of life as much. So if we have to change the public perception in both the countries about each other, only then relations will be able to improve. We would need to do what? We would need to do this. Then invest in strong academic and policy research on China. There should be smoother academic exchanges in areas such as environment, health and cultural building, long-term people-to-people contact. Continued discussion and collaboration at multilateral platforms. जैसे BRICS में, SCO में, G20 में we are collaborating. We need to continuously discuss various common issues there. India's foreign policy. तो अच्छा यहाँ पे आते हैं. So these points that I have mentioned here, these are not specific to China. These are something that we'll be able to talk about in any bilateral. जैसे इंडिया रशिया की बात करेंगे तो हम बात कर सकते हैं कि SCO में तो रशिया भी है, नहीं है? SCO में रशिया है कि नहीं? वहां पे मोर कोलैबोरेशन देयर. ब्रिक्स में रशिया है, मोर कोलैबोरेशन देयर. ऐसे यूएस की बात करोगे, G20 में यूएस भी है, मोर कोलैबोरेशन देयर. So in our way forward, this dimension can always be there. Okay, but then in the end we'll also say that this is also something that will be a dimension in our way forward in any India major power topic. What India's foreign policy should be guided by strategic autonomy. While we should collaborate with China, we have pivoted to China. We should collaborate with US, but we should not become a pawn in the major power struggle. We should follow our own foreign relations methodology so that our interest is prioritized, not the interest of any of the major power. So focus on the vision of multipolar world and hedge against major power rivalry. While India should work with US and Quad, but it should avoid getting sucked up into US-China rivalry. यहाँ पे चाइना के पर्सपेक्टिव से बात कर रहे थे तो वी आर टॉकिंग लाइक दिस. ऐसे वी कैन टॉक फ्रॉम द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ रशिया. वहां पे भी हम बोलेंगे व्हाइल वी शुड हैव क्लोज रिलेशंस विद रशिया, बट वी शुड नॉट गेट स्टक इन द रशिया यूएस राइवलरी. तो इंडियाज फॉरेन पॉलिसी शुड कंटिन्यू टू बी डिक्टेटेड बाय स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑटोनॉमी. दिस इज वन डायमेंशन इन आवर वे फॉरवर्ड जो हम कहीं और भी लिख सकते हैं. आर वी एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस? तो हमारे वे फॉरवर्ड का फ्रेमवर्क क्या रहेगा ब्रॉडली, दैट विल यूज इन मेनी अदर आंसर. इट वुड बी दैट. देन अनदर थिंग, strengthen India economically, scientifically and militarily. If you want good relations with major countries, आप चाहते हो इंडिया रशिया रिलेशंस अच्छे, इंडिया चाइना रिलेशन शुड बी ग्रेट. इंडिया का इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ हैज टू इंप्रूव so that India China become dependent on each other a lot. India में scientific advancement, technology development should happen so that China doesn't look down upon us. China should also be able to dependent on us for certain technologies. Militarily, we should never be weaker. Otherwise, what would happen? China will get a chance and will weaken us on every other front. So we should continue working on these fronts. We have to prioritize that. We are promoting scientific temper in the country. We are focused on scientific growth and development. We are focused on economic growth and development. We are focused on improving defense production in the country, indigenization of technology, so that सब कुछ होने के बाद भी suppose tomorrow India China war occurs, in that scenario we should in no way be seen as a weaker part. We should be able to counter every move of China. So this will also act as deterrence. When China would know कि यार India is equally capable, then any war will be disastrous for them also. So for improving India-China relations, what's also important? We strengthen India economically, scientifically as well as militarily. Right? तो देखो अब ये चीजें फिर से समझो. When we are talking about India-US relations, can we say कि उसको भी strengthen करने के लिए it's important that India को हम कैसे grow करें way forward में? Can this be a way forward for India? Can this be a way forward for India? Yes. देखो अब उसमें just examples would change, but the ideas would be same. Why US has not imposed that much tariff on China? Because China उनका supply of rare earth metals, rare earth magnets affect कर देगा. India have not developed its. India also have lots of rare earth reserves. India has not focused on it a lot. So if we want good India-US relations, if we are economically better off, scientifically better off, militarily better off, we'll be able to have better relations with India US. वहां पे वे फॉरवर्ड में बस एक इंडियन डायस्पोरा वाला डायमेंशन अलग से आ जाएगा, अदरवाइज मोस्ट ऑफ द थिंग्स कैन रिमेन सेम. Are we getting it? And finally we are saying that China should respect the red line. यार bilateral negotiation everything can happen, but these are certain things that we will not compromise on. जैसे अरुणाचल प्रदेश वाला रीजन चाइना के पास जाए वो compromisable है ही नहीं. Forget that. So China should also be respecting, recognizing that these red lines are something very crucial for us that will not allow to be violated. इंडिया चाइना रिलेशंस पे अब सोचो कोई भी सवाल आता है, इंडिया क्यों चाइना के लिए सिग्निफिकेंट है, चाइना क्यों इंडिया के लिए सिग्निफिकेंट है, व्हाट आर द मेजर कंटेंशियस इश्यूज, हाउ शुड वी गो अहेड, विल वी बी एबल टू आंसर दैट? नाउ कंक्लूजन में ना आई हैव ट्राइड टू गेट अ फ्यू थिंग्स. जैसे एक्सटर्नल अफेयर्स मिनिस्टर एस जयशंकर एक बार बोलते हैं कि while both India and China remained committed to a multipolar world, they should recognize that a multipolar Asia was one of its essential constituents. एक यूनिपोलर वर्ल्ड है वेयर यूएस डोमिनेट्स, बट वी वांट अ मल्टीपोलर वर्ल्ड वेयर देयर आर मेनी मेजर प्लेयर्स. तो व्हाइल बोथ इंडिया एंड चाइना वांट्स कि एक वर्ल्ड मल्टीपोलर होना चाहिए, बट फॉर दैट चाइना शुड आल्सो रिकॉग्नाइज दैट देयर शुड बी अ मल्टीपोलर एशिया. तो दिस कंक्लूजन विल टॉक अबाउट व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट कि कैसे व्हाई चाइना शुड नॉट हैम्पर ग्रोथ ऑफ इंडिया. समझ में आ रहा है? सिमिलरली कंक्लूजन 2 देखोगे यहाँ पे द टू कंट्री, ये जनरल कंक्लूजन कि यार व्हेन द क्वेश्चन इज अबाउट सजेस्ट मेजर्स फॉर इंप्रूविंग रिलेशंस बिटवीन इंडिया एंड चाइना, तो यू विल सजेस्ट मेजर्स एंड देन यू विल से कि दोनों बोथ द नेबर्स should be able to trust each other, work with each other in a manner that two major powers live together peacefully, something like that. So यहाँ पे that is being said, the two countries should explore the right ways for major neighboring countries to coexist with mutual respect and trust, pursue common development and achieve a win-win cooperation. So in different type of question this can be a conclusion. और similar चीज है, the positive signs in India-China relation is encouraging, but the deficit of trust calls for sustained efforts. The road ahead may be difficult, but forging a stable and cooperative relationship between the two Asian neighbors is a goal worth pursuing. I have not written any of these conclusions. मैं newspaper articles पढ़ के वहां से कि क्या मैं conclusion में use कर सकता हूँ, I have got it. On these lines, you can plan your conclusion कि on India-China relation if a topic would come, how will I do that? क्या हमें समझ में आ रही हैं चीजें? इंडिया चाइना रिलेशंस पे ब्रॉडर लेवल पे वी हैव क्लैरिटी. डिड यू ऑल एंजॉय इट? नहीं एंजॉय नहीं किया? सबको नींद आई क्या? ओके ओके, लेट्स नाउ गो टू डिड पाकिस्तान आल्सो गेट वेवर? नहीं. How will India be able to become a manufacturing hub without cheap Chinese raw material and components? वही तो हम बोल रहे हैं. We देखो, how is China producing those cheap things? Because of their large scale manufacturing capabilities. That is what we want to achieve. Initially we may need to depend on China. देखो, how did China became a manufacturing powerhouse, electronics powerhouse? You go to 1980s of China, they also started with assembly work. Slowly and steadily they got technology. Silicon Valley से technology आ रही है. Slowly and steadily they got human resource. They were able to bring back a lot of their diaspora, a lot of people of Chinese origin who were settled in Western world, and thus they are now in a position to threaten US. We'll have to focus on those dimensions. Okay, now let's go to India-China border dispute in slightly more detail. ओके, एक तो इंडिया चाइना रिलेशंस का पूरा टॉपिक, एक इंडिया चाइना बॉर्डर डिस्प्यूट का, और इसके अलावा भी कुछ हो सकता है. जैसे न्यूज में ना इन फ्यूचर कभी ऐसा आएगा कि इंडिया चाइना यूएस का डायनामिक्स पे कुछ बड़ा डिस्कशन हो रहा है. वी विल टॉक अबाउट दैट आल्सो. इंडिया चाइना पाकिस्तान वाले वैसे भी इंडिया चाइना यूएस को आप समझ रहे हो ऑलरेडी, बट अगर कुछ वैसा होता है ना कि इस पे क्वेश्चन आने के चांसेस ज्यादा है, विल कवर दोस टॉपिक्स आल्सो. लेट्स फॉर नाउ कम टू इंडिया चाइना बॉर्डर डिस्प्यूट, द ओरिजिन ऑफ द डिस्प्यूट, बिगिनिंग ऑफ द डिस्प्यूट. देखो, the problem lies in the colonial rule. At the time of colonial rule, the borders were not very well defined. फिर देश इंडिपेंडेंट हो भी गया, border not being properly defined led to troubles between the two neighbors. In fact, if you go to Northeast India, in 1914 Simla Conference provided for McMahon Line as the boundary between India and Tibet. You can see this. This is the McMahon Line. But this was an agreement between British and Tibet. But China said, we don't agree to that agreement. For us, what is like even the Arunachal Pradesh wala part is part of China. They have that argument. So there is McMahon Line. McMahon Line is the current de facto boundary. It is the boundary which India considers, ये है India China की boundary, but China demands a lot more in Arunachal Pradesh. अब when we go to the western sector, at least यहाँ पे eastern sector में there is a McMahon Line. Eastern sector में there is McMahon Line. There is an agreement between British India and Tibet. But western side में even that is missing. You will see there were almost a dozen British attempts to arrive at a suitable boundary. Most, however, were exploratory surveys by frontier agents reflecting British expansion in the north. They were exploratory surveys. They were not demarcation work being done. And by whom? By the frontier agents. They were exploratory surveys by the frontier agents. Frontier agents were like protecting British frontiers from increasing Russian influence and all. So they were exploratory surveys by them, and they varied with British geopolitical objective vis-a-vis perceived Russian threat. कई बार वो एकदम कश्मीर के ऊपर भी चले गए, जम्मू एंड कश्मीर लद्दाख के ऊपर जाके बोलते वो पूरा should be part of British India. कई बार in uncertain exploration they have talked about regions below as part of India. So here the things were more confusing. So net result was what? Net result was that in 1947 no definite boundary line to the east of Karakoram Pass existed. Even during Nehru's engagement with Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai between 1954 and 1956, the border issue was mostly excluded from conversation. Okay, so on the eastern front फिर भी एक border है McMahon line, but on the western front एक Johnson line है, but उसको कोई नहीं मान रहा है. और People's Republic of China, the current communist government, तो ignore कर रही है. Beginning of border dispute. पहले अक्साई चीन की बात करते हैं. Neither India nor China had a permanent presence in Aksai Chin. It was a barren, high altitude desert. Do we all understand? मैं Aksai Chin बोल रहा हूँ तो कुछ part की बात कर रहा हूँ. None of us had a permanent presence there. But in 1957, China announced completion of road across Aksai Chin Plateau from Xinjiang and occupied Aksai Chin. So till देखो till 1957 इंडिया के बॉर्डर में वो है कि Aksai Chin is part of India's territory, but there are permanent presence did not exist because it was a cold desert वाला region. But in 1957 China occupies it. Earlier in 1951 India had also established control over Tawang. Now what was this Tawang? तो is part of Arunachal Pradesh, but till 1957 वहाँ पे Tibetan administration का control था. Till 1951. So India occupied Tawang on the grounds of 1914 agreement. 1914 में मैकमोहन लाइन वाला एग्रीमेंट था. इससे इस तरफ क्या है, इससे इस तरफ इंडिया है. Are we getting it? So in 1951 India did that. It did it on the basis of the fact that it had signed a border agreement with Tibet in 1914 which defined the boundary by the McMahon. So when China occupies Tibet, China also says that Tawang belongs to China, right? India says ki Aksai Chin belongs to India. China has illegally occupied it in 1957. Now initially there was a swap suggestion. जैसे चाइना की तरफ से दिस वाज द स्वैप सजेशन कि अक्साई चिन चाइना को दे दो बिकॉज इट्स स्ट्रेटेजिकली इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर चाइना एंड एंटायर अरुणाचल प्रदेश शुड बी विद इंडिया. वो वाला इनिशियली देयर वाज दिस स्वैप सजेशन. तो जू एनलाई द फॉर्मर प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ चाइना ड्यूरिंग हिज इंडिया विजिट proposed a swap where India would concede Chinese position in Aksai Chin in exchange for Chinese acceptance of India's claim over Arunachal Pradesh. However, India refused. Why domestic politics becomes a issue? So India refused it at that time. The Tibetan issue, including asylum to Dalai Lama, compounded the border problem. Eventually, became the key reason for China-India War of 1962. But I hope border wala issue हमें समझ में आया. Now, what is the current scenario? Current scenario is this: कि the border dispute is the biggest dispute or biggest tension between India-China bilateral issue. Is the biggest bilateral issue between India and China. आप अगर border देखना चाहोगे India and China के बीच में, it can be divided into 3 sections: western sector, central middle sector and eastern sector. यहाँ पे you'll see this is western sector, central middle sector and eastern sector. Western sector में it includes border between Union Territory of Leh and Ladakh on the Indian side and Xinjiang and Tibet province on the Chinese side. The boundary dispute pertains to Johnson Line proposed by the British in 1860s, but Aksai Chin in the this Johnson Line puts Aksai Chin in the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. But China says that it never acceded to Johnson Line and therefore doesn't consider Aksai Chin as part of India. समझ में आया? तो फिर से if we go here, India says that ये पूरा territory इंडिया का है. अभी इस पे किसका कंट्रोल है? चाइना का. Because of the Johnson Line that was proposed in 1860, China says that they never acceded to the concept of Johnson Line and the entire Aksai Chin belongs to them. The major dispute. Do we understand? Now, China has illegally occupied 43,000 square kilometer of the sector Aksai Chin, including more than 5,000 kilometers ceded to it by Pakistan. तो पाकिस्तान ने इस रीजन में ये इस तरफ ना पाकिस्तान ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर है, यहाँ पे एक रीजन पाकिस्तान ने किसे दे दिया है? चाइना को दे दिया है. तो चाइना हैज इलीगली ऑक्युपाइड बोथ दीज प्लेसेस. The occupation is strategically significant for China as this gives them access to Pakistan occupied Kashmir and thus the Arabian Sea. अब आता है सेंट्रल मिडिल सेक्टर. सेंट्रल मिडिल सेक्टर किसका? उत्तराखंड हिमाचल वाला. वहां पे बहुत बड़े डिस्प्यूट्स नहीं, वहां पे मोर और लेस थिंग्स हैव बीन रिजॉल्व्ड. देन वी हैव ईस्टर्न सेक्टर. The eastern sector of India-China boundary forms border between Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh on Indian side and China on the other side. China have disagreed with McMahon Line and claims almost the whole of Arunachal Pradesh as part of southern Tibet. Region is strategically very important as it holds key defenses of the entire sub-Himalayan space. ये जैसे Aksai Chin is strategically very important for China. In the same way, this region is strategically very important for India because अगर southern Tibet के नाम पे अरुणाचल प्रदेश तक China comes, then it will have access to the entire Brahmaputra Valley, which can be a problem for us. So in 1962, PLA occupied it, but then they announced a unilateral ceasefire and withdrew. But since then, they have kept claiming rights over almost the whole of Arunachal Pradesh. This is the current scenario. दो सेक्टर्स में there are issues, middle sectors में almost all the issues are resolved. कुछ छोटी मोटी चीजें बाकी. Okay, now to resolve this border dispute, several initiatives have been taken. तो देखो, it was the Chinese foreign minister's visit. After that, border dispute पे discussion started. 1976 में we started, we reinitiated ambassadorial relations. है ना। फिर 1980-81 में हमने negotiations वापस शुरू किए। तो since the early 1980s both sides have held multiple round of talks to resolve the border dispute. However, a lasting solution have not come. क्या क्या मेजर इश्यूज, मेजर इवेंट्स आए हैं? तो देयर हैज बीन अ बॉर्डर पीस एंड ट्रैंक्विलिटी एग्रीमेंट इन 1993. इट इज द फर्स्ट मेजर एग्रीमेंट ऑन बॉर्डर इशू एंड प्रोवाइड्स फॉर मेंटेनेंस ऑफ peace along the border. It provided for respecting LAC, keeping the forces in areas along LAC to a minimum, and limiting deployment of major categories of armament along LAC. So this is LAC को tranquil रखो, LAC को peaceful रखो. If you want to have negotiation discussion, there should not be a lot of war happening here. Second, high level bilateral talks started in 1994 after more than 30 years on border tension and stalemate. 1996 में एक agreement on confidence building measures था. Agreement on confidence building measure basically talked about कि we will both prohibit use of firearm and along LAC. It laid down norms for troop presence and conduct. तो यू विल सी कई बार एलएसी पे ना दे डोंट यूज फायर आर्म्स, वो हाथ से लड़ रहे होते हैं, है ना। तो वो यूज ऑफ फायर आर्म्स एक्सेट्रा हैव बीन प्रोहिबिटेड बाय दीस एग्रीमेंट्स. देन जो फर्स्ट साइकिल ऑफ नेगोशिएशन था फ्रॉम 1993 टू 2003, 1993 में नेगोशिएशन स्टार्टेड, इट एब्रप्टली केम टू एंड इन 2003 और इट रीच्ड द ग्राइंडिंग हॉल्ट इन 2003. व्हाई, व्हाट हैपेंड? इस नेगोशिएशन में ना इवेंचुअली इट वाज डिसाइडेड कि लेट्स शेयर मैप्स विथ ईच अदर. नाउ तो अभी आप कितना ऑक्यूपाई करके, अभी आपका एलएसी कहां तक है, कितना है अभी, हम ये कहां है? वी वांटेड टू शेयर मैप, but China refused to exchange maps of the western sector. They were worried that finalizing a mutually agreed LAC will solidify its border. So the process came to an halt, all the negotiation discussion came to an halt, and here in 2003 a political dimension was added in the discussion by the mechanism of special representatives. So now दोनों political leaders के special representatives will, there will be discussions held at the level of special representatives. The two sides in 2003 agreed on the need of political dimension to the border dispute negotiation, and a political representative each was nominated in the dialogue process. The SR talks, so special representative talks, have played a critical role in India-China relations. It led to signing of agreement on political parameters and guiding principles in 2005. Agreement on political parameters and guiding principles basically discussed कि ये core principles हैं that will be following in negotiation and how dispute would be resolved, and the agreement declared that a package settlement was the only way forward. Package settlement would be like something you give up, something I give up, those kind of thing will be the only way forward, but nothing much could be done after this, and the exercise got suspended in politics soon. फिर the special representative mechanism has been very beneficial in the sense it has prevented any major flare up at least till 2020. Till 2020 बहुत ज्यादा टेंशन बॉर्डर पे नहीं रहा, या हम किसी को मार रहे हैं, वो किसी को मार रहे हैं, वो that situation had not occurred, and even after 2020 it was special representative mechanism which has controlled things. अभी recently क्या हुआ? In December 2024, 23rd meeting of special representatives of India and China met again, first time after the friction emerged in the western sector in 2020. In August 2025, 24th meeting of the special representative mechanism took place. यहाँ पे here the two sides have reached a 10-point consensus where they are talking about reopening 3 traditional border trading market. The two SRs have also decided to set up a special export group to move ahead for an early harvest agreement. Early harvest agreement like जो भी चीजें फटाफट resolve हो सकती है, let us resolve that. So special representative mechanism is also there. So this special representative mechanism was initiated in 2003, है ना. ये अभी भी in August 2025 it met in December, it met in December. Our NSA went to China, abhi their counterpart came to India and we have had negotiation. Then 2012 में working mechanism on consultation and coordination for India-China border affairs was also started. अब देखो नाम देखो, working mechanism for consultation and coordination, WMCC. Here the focus was on better coordination and conveying of the messages. कि एक institutional mechanism है कि any issue that emerges will be able to convey it more effectively. तो strengthening communication and cooperation, it is led by joint secretary level officials, और इसका भी अभी जुलाई 2025 में 34th meeting was held. its meeting has been continuously being held and abhi recently its 34th meeting was held. Please note abhi 2012 mein start hua hai, 2012 to 2025 in 13 years if it's having 34 meetings, so it's having more meetings than the special representative mechanism. Okay, फिर 2013 में border defense cooperation agreement was signed. It lists several mechanisms to reduce misunderstanding and improve communication. It says that neither side will use military capability against the other side. It reiterates that. Then 2024 में अभी border patrol agreement. After what? After the meeting of Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping कहाँ पे? In the BRICS summit. After which the normalization process began. We have signed a border patrol agreement. It's an agreement on border patrolling along the LAC in the India-China border areas in Despang and Demchok in October 2024, leading to disengagement from all friction point of 2020. So in 2020, at all the places where we had friction tension, now disengagement has taken place on all those points. Patrolling activities and wherever applicable grazing activities will resume as per long standing practice before the friction started in 2020. फिर there are other high level engagement also. You will see defense minister, foreign minister ये भी regularly meet कर रहे हैं and they are also talking about border issues. Okay, तो progress क्या हुआ है? तो no or very limited progress. As such, has the dispute been resolved? तो नहीं. On any side, either on the eastern front or on the western front, not much. Border dispute is still active, but and then several steps by China have also exacerbated the problem. जैसे China-Pakistan economic corridor, Doklam issue, Galwan crisis, all these things have made the tensions become higher. But some positive progress have been made in recent past. Jैसे 2024 border patrol agreement have led to complete disengagement. Then high level dialogue continues, including on the sideline of SCO summit in 2025. 24th round of special representative talks have happened in 2025, August 2025. इससे पहले 23rd round had happened in 2024. तो some progress is being made. But क्यों नहीं हो रहा है? Point is, why are we not able to resolve border issue? ये जो अभी फिर से अपन ने जो पढ़ा background वाला, it is just for your understanding. जब हम in way forward में we talk about special representative mechanism, so you should know ना कि special representative mechanism was started in 2003. वहाँ पे political dimension got added in the negotiation where leaders के main representatives जैसे इंडिया की तरफ से NSA, उनकी तरफ से उनके counterpart, they came at higher level, they were discussing issues. Idea was when at higher level issues would be discussed, resolution would be much easier, resolution would be much more effective. समझ में आ रहा है? तो for that purpose अब आते हैं एग्जाम में क्या आएगा. एग्जाम में आएगा एनालिसिस करने को. एग्जाम में आएगा कि यार why is India China border issue a big problem, why are we not able to resolve it? तो पहला, lack of mutually accepted and delineated LAC. we are not talking about border, कम से कम LAC का तो होता ना कि this is LAC, this is line of actual control. When there is clarity, lack of clarity on that, so even on LAC, we are not fighting on the India-China border. India-China border कहीं और है, LAC कहीं और है. Even on LAC, we are having differences and we end up fighting with each other. Attempted map exchange has collapsed due to maximalist claims. When we exchange maps, what happened? India ने भी अपना पूरा अक्साई चीन अपना बोला, चाइना ने पूरा अरुणाचल प्रदेश अपना बोला. So that map exchange thing, all those things collapsed. Strategic significance of border region. Second, why the border dispute is not being resolved? Aksai chain is very crucial for China's access to Pakistan and Arabian Sea. Similarly, an overreach by China in Arunachal Pradesh may threaten security of the entire northeast. So ये region इतने strategic है कि no one is ready to compromise. Third, infrastructure race towards the border is a major source of tension with both sides doubting each other's intention. फिर domestic politics, strong nationalism and historic animosity. We have already understood this, because among people there is so much of hatred and so much of hatred against the other country कि any compromise, any concession to other country will have negative political consequences within the domestic. अब Xi Jinping कल decide करते हैं कि नहीं चलो अक्साई चीन दे देते इंडिया को, हमारा तो टेरिटरी इतना बड़ा वैसे भी. Xi Jinping को अपनी प्रेसिडेंसी शायद लूज करनी पड़ जाएगी. There will be so much of domestic, even though there is no democracy in China, but डेमोक्रेसी नहीं भी है फिर भी अपनी पार्टी में तो उनको अपोज करने वाले लोग हैं ना, हु वांट टू बिकम प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ चाइना. प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड, तो डोमेस्टिक पॉलिटिक्स वुड बी देयर. यहाँ पे इन केस ऑफ इंडिया opposition will raise voice. In case of China, the same party will raise voice. So, domestic politics, strong nationalism, and historical animosity is another reason why the resolution of this dispute is difficult. Then, geopolitical rivalry. China sees itself as the dominant power in the region and is not willing to make concession which will elevate India's status. India's increased engagement with US and Japan is something which is seen by China as a mechanism to counter it. Again, chance of compromise is lesser. China's close relation with Pakistan. Similarly, these things we already know, so we'll not repeat it. Shifting goalpost by China is another major problem. What did China want? Before 1959 or till 1959, China wanted adjustment in Aksai Chin. It was not claiming Arunachal Pradesh or anything. What did it want? कि Aksai Chin में adjustment कर लेते, थोड़ा तुम रख लो, थोड़ा मैं, something like that. That would have been a solution for them. But later, they went for swap claims, except the McMahon line in the east for India's acceptance of its claim in Aksai Chin. This is what. तो अब पूरा Aksai Chin चाहिए उनको. In return, they will accept India's claim over Arunachal Pradesh. But since 1985, even that has. So now they want concession in the east, specifically the secession of Tawang. कि Arunachal Pradesh पूरा नहीं, Tawang give to China. It also denies all dispute in Aksai. Aksai Chin तो पूरा हमारा है. Are we getting how things evolve? पहले, before 1959, they wanted some adjustment in Aksai Chin, no dispute on the Arunachal side. Later, 1960 से 1985 तक, they were like, all Arunachal belongs to India, give us entire Aksai Chin. That would have been okay. Now they are saying there is no dispute in Aksai Chin. Aksai Chin to is of China. In the Arunachal region, we need Tawang tak pura. So this shifting goalpost makes resolution of border dispute difficult. आप थोड़ा consensus दो, थोड़ा concession दो, and there will be more demand. फिर China's salami slicing strategy and growing power difference between India and China. So what China has been using a method where it will make a lot of small cuts to eventually get, rather than going for a big war, it will slowly on multiple fronts try to get its target achieved. That is also because of that what happens, tensions बार बार emerge होती रहती हैं, creating problems. So way forward should be what? Way forward we mostly understand. If we go to way forward of the previous topic, you will understand that कि भाई पहले political consensus चाहिए, फिर negotiation, continuous negotiation चाहिए, then we need to increase collaboration at other levels. वो सारे points ही यहाँ पे आएंगे, है ना? If I go to conclusion, one conclusion, ये मैंने अपनी मर्जी से ऐसे लिख दिया था, to make this century Asia's century, both India and China need to work together, and for these Himalayan neighbors to work together, they have to resolve their most contentious dispute, the territorial border dispute. To conclude, भाई ये, if you want that India China should work together, if you want that this century becomes Asia's century, you will have to resolve your most important dispute. What is that? Territorial border dispute. One conclusion can be this: the push for border dispute settlement was will only come when the political leadership of both the countries jointly accept that there is nothing to be gained and possibly a lot to be lost by allowing the border remained unsettled. ये मैंने newspaper से कहीं से उठा के बनाया था. So these are the two ways in which there can be other ways of concluding also. You can talk about that. You can keep covering that. But these are two things that I wanted to cover today. I hope we have clarity on India-China relations. है ना? कल I will continue with थोड़ा सा India-China relation. मुझे लगेगा कि मेरे को कोई एक दो टॉपिक और करने, फिर I'll go to BRICS SCO and India-Russia. You will say कि सर BRICS SCO भी क्यों कवर कर रहे हो? Because BRICS SCO ना, they are associated with India-China, India-Russia a lot, so we should be covering it with them only. हम जब इंटरनेशनल बॉडीज कवर करेंगे तो मोस्टली यूएन बॉडीज कवर करते हैं. रीजनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जैसे when we'll cover India neighborhood, we'll also cover BIMSTEC and SAARC. When we'll cover India, Southeast Asia, we'll also cover ASEAN. है ना, so that ये इंटरनेशनल बॉडीज ग्रुपिंग्स भी साथ में होती रहे with the major topics. Okay, so I'll see you tomorrow at 11. आप क्या फोटो खींच रहे हो, अपनी खींच रहे हो? अच्छा चलिए, तो I'll see you tomorrow at 11 and we'll continue with IR tomorrow also. Okay, thank you very much. एक मिनट बेटा.